Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. I feel like we're going to have this conversation, sooner rather than later about the Miami Hurricanes looking for their next defensive coordinator. Now, as we sit Sunday afternoon, there's no news about the future of Lance Guidry, but you got to feel like, especially after the performance that we just saw Saturday night and really what you saw all of 2024, Mario Cristobal has to make a move. Now, it's one thing to have to make the move, and I think the next conversation is, all right, what are some names that we'd be interested in going out and getting? And I think where you want to start the conversation is, what are we looking for in our next defensive coordinator? Now, there's a couple of different routes you could go, and I'm just going to throw out this route really quick. Young NFL defensive minds has kind of been a little bit of a niche that's been really successful the last couple of years. Michigan went to Mike McDonald and then they went to Jesse Minter, had a lot of success with both of those young NFL defensive coaches that bumped down to the college football level. Danton Lynn's another good example in it. Even Steve Belichick up at Washington in 2024. That's another really good example of a young NFL coach going down and taking over defense at the collegiate level and having a lot of success. Now, I certainly could see Miami going that route. And to me, that route might make a lot more sense because you look at this program and say the one question you'll have when you hire an NFL guy is, okay, what can they do on the recruiting trail? To me, it's a conversation you have to have. We all know that if you want to compete at the highest level, you better recruit your tails off. That's not a question that I'm that concerned with about this Miami Hurricanes program, because as long as Mario Cristobal is running this program, I'm pretty confident in the talent acquisition department. I think the better conversation, the more important conversation for Mario Cristobal is, I got to surround myself with better coaches. Because at the end of the day, where Mario Cristobal does a really good job is putting talent together on a roster, it's not been good enough in terms of maximizing that talent. And so for Mario Cristobal, I'm less concerned with getting elite recruiters as my coordinators, and I'm a little bit more concerned with getting dang good football coaches as my coordinators. And I think that's where the conversation starts. So young NFL names, of which I'm not the biggest NFL guy in the world. I don't have great lists for the young NFL names, but I do think that could be a route for the Miami Hurricanes. Now, I want to get into a few names at the collegiate level that also would make a lot of sense. Now, before we get into it, as always, to the Miami Hurricane fans, let it fly in the comment section. We all know how we all feel about Lance Guidry. Now, I think the conversation is, if we're going to part ways with Lance Guidry, at what defensive coordinator would we want taking over this defense? Would love for some names in the comment section. I'm sure this is going to be a conversation that we're talking a lot about over the next couple of weeks. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into one that I really like, and that's Travis Williams. Really, really good recruiter, like proven recruiter at all his stops, Auburn, UCF, and now at Arkansas. I think more importantly, he's a guy that has seemingly maxed out his defenses everywhere he's been. Did a really good job at UCF, then moved up to Arkansas. Look, Arkansas is not a program that has better football players than the opposing teams they play. They recruit towards the bottom of that SEC conference. You look at that defense and say it consistently punched above its weight. It gets in the backfield, makes a lot of plays, which I think where you want to start. Like, you look at this Miami Hurricanes defense, we got dogs on the defensive line. I look at that depth chart and say that defensive line at times was disruptive. I don't think it was disruptive enough. And so I look at it and say, I wouldn't mind having a defensive coordinator that wants to create negative plays, wants to create turnovers. That is kind of what Travis Williams wants to do. And you talk about young, up and coming, defensive minded coaches, a guy that I probably think will be a head coach at some point. Travis Williams, to me, would make a lot of sense. Now, another name that I think a lot of Miami Hurricane fans would certainly like is Jim Leonhard. Jim Leonhard at Wisconsin, it didn't get much better with him as a defensive coordinator. Now, the weird part about Jim Leonhard is, ever since he left Wisconsin, he took a senior analyst job at Illinois and then moved up to the NFL and is working with the Denver Broncos. By the way, doing a great job with that Denver Broncos secondary. if he wants to return to the collegiate level and take over a defense, I think he's waiting for the right opportunity. I don't think it's because of a lack of interest. I think there's been a lot of programs over the last 2 years that have contacted Jim Leonhard about being the next defensive coordinator. And I think there's been some apprehension and kind of waiting for the right opportunity. I look at this Miami Hurricanes team and say that this could be the right opportunity. Again, if you take over this Miami Hurricanes defense, talent acquisition will not be a problem. You're going to have a defense from a talent standpoint that can be really good. In fact, I think the talent on the defense, even in 2024, was pretty darn good. It just wasn't maximized, and it was poorly coached. Now, in the secondary, there certainly were question marks from a personnel standpoint, but I looked at it and said it certainly should have been as bad as it was the last couple of weeks of the season. Jim Leonhard's a guy that at Wisconsin, once again, one of those programs that it's not going to recruit like Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, but always seem to consistently kind of punch above their weight and max out the talent on their defense. I think Jim Leonhard, one of the best in the business. One more I'll throw out there. I wouldn't want to prerequisite this with this. Sounds like, and I'm getting all tangled up with my cords here. It does sound like Ryan Walters is on his way to Washington. If Miami were to move in on Ryan Walters right now, because I haven't seen anything official, I haven't seen any paperwork being signed. It just sounds like they're finalizing a deal. If you're going to make the move, make it quick, and maybe go bring in a guy like Ryan Walters. Ryan Walters at Illinois was elite, and then he goes to Purdue, and obviously it didn't work out for him as a head coach. He was a first-year head coach or a first-time head coach at a program where it is so hard to win at. What I love about Ryan Walters, a couple different things. One, just a dang good defensive mind. I think more importantly, or just as importantly, he's a great evaluator of talent. I mean, you look at a lot of those guys on that Illinois defense that were NFL draft picks, they weren't 4 or 5-star guys out of high school. You look at a guy like Devin Witherspoon, top 5 NFL draft pick from the state of Florida. He was unranked. Ryan Walters does a great job developing him. You look at a guy like Kirby Joseph, or you look at a guy like Sidney Brown, all guys that were low 3 stars, not really coveted coming out of high school. They come to Illinois, and all of a sudden, they're top 100 NFL draft picks. So not only from a defensive schematic standpoint, do I like Ryan Walters? I love the talent eval, and I love the development that Ryan Walters brings, two of which definitely the development that has been a problem for the Miami Hurricanes. Miami going into 2025. I think there's going to be a lot of talk about Miami having to go through a rebuild year after Cam Ward. I don't necessarily agree with that. Now, is the offense going to put up the numbers that Cam Ward put up in 2024? No, absolutely not. Cam Ward is 101. He was the best quarterback in the country this year. There's no Cam Ward in the transfer portal. I don't think there's a Cam Ward on this Miami Hurricanes roster. Now, we'll probably talk more about Emory Williams over the next couple of weeks and whether Miami should go get a quarterback in the portal. But the recipe for Miami having a good offense, it was there against Iowa State. And that is, we got a big, nasty offensive line, which Mario Cristobal has done a great job of. Hey, Mario Cristobal, right when he took over this program, said, we are going to build this program from the trenches out. You got a really good offensive line. You're going to have a really good running back room, regardless if Damian Martinez stays or goes. Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lau are going to be some of the better backs you see in the country. This team's going to have it had one of the best rushing attacks in the country this year. It's top 5 in the country. It's probably going to be one of the best units in the country in 2025 as well. The numbers in it might not look the same, but you make no mistake about it. This Miami Hurricanes offense, I think, will be able to put up points, specifically running the football, controlling the time possession, kind of playing like Michigan did in 2023. Now, can you get an elite defensive coordinator to dramatically revamp this defense in 1 year? That's the question you're talking about. And there are a couple. I think Miami right now is the most attractive pro. If they were to fire Lance Guidry and go out and hire a DC, it's by far the most attractive job on the market. And I think they could go out to some schools and grab their defensive coordinators, but I think they could go out and get some free agents, guys like Ryan Walters. I think we know Miami can do a lot better than Lance Guidry. At the end of the day, it can't get much worse than what we saw the last couple of weeks from this Hurricanes defense. I don't think you can go another year with it. It's already frustrating enough that in 2024 you had an offense that could have won a national championship. There's zero doubt in my mind about that. The defense wasn't nearly good enough. You didn't even make the playoffs. I think that bowl game performance was the last kick in the butt for Mario Cristobal to say, hey, we got to make a change going into 2025. And it's never fun to talk about taking somebody's job and firing somebody. But at the end of the day, you owe it to the fans, you owe it to the players on the roster to get the best staff you can going into 2025. And it's hard to argue that Lance Guidry would meet that criteria. We'll see what goes on. I think it's an opportunity for Miami to really upgrade their defense coaching staff. And I wouldn't even limit it to Lance Guidry. Travis Jackson, coaching the back end, that was a massive problem. It didn't seem like players were getting better. It seemed like players were confused pretty consistently. Got to get better coaches. Got to get better teachers on this defensive staff. And I think Ryan Walters, Jim Leonhard, Travis Williams would all be really good options. Let it fly in the comment section with some coaches that you would like to see Miami go after. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.